I'm just waiting for the bells to stop chiming before we get started. Okay, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to the Portsmouth City Council Cabinet meeting. My name is Donna Jones, I'm the leader of the City Council. A bit of housekeeping, safety information to start with. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and also the public gallery. Please follow us to the stairwells. Please do not attempt to use the lifts, and please assemble outside at the Queen Victoria statue in front of the civic offices. In order to comply with the Portsmouth Cultural Trust fire marshal regulations, if you signed in at reception, please remember to sign out when you leave the building, unless of course the fire is in reception, in which case just get out as quickly as possible. In terms of live web streaming, just to draw everyone's attention to the fact that this meeting is live streamed, so filmed from a camera in the corner of the room. We haven't got any deputations today, but if there were, those that are making a deputation are able to let us know if they don't wish to be recorded. And can I just remind everybody that when you come to speak, please make sure you press the yellow button on your microphone, or actually, sorry, the corner one on its own to speak, because that then activates the recording device. Okay, so first of all, apologies for absence. I haven't received any apologies for absence, but I note that Councillor Robert New isn't present, so he's on his way from another meeting, so hopefully he'll be with us shortly. Colleagues, does anybody have any declarations of interest? No, thank you very much. Okay, on to item 3, the record of the previous decision meeting held on the 28th of September. Trusting that colleagues have all had a chance to read the minutes. Does anybody have any questions or matters arising from the minutes? No, in which case I shall sign those as a true declaration of the meeting at the end of this meeting today. Okay, on to item 4, the appointment to the Porchester Crematorium Joint Committee. We have got a change in membership there. Councillor Robert New has resigned from the Porchester Crematorium Joint Committee due to work commitments, and we have now appointed Councillor Frank Jonas as the representative onto the Joint Committee. Cabinet needs to formally approve that. Are colleagues happy? Thank you very much. So that will then, we will notify the Porchester Crematorium Joint Committee, but I understand, Councillor Jonas, you have already attended a meeting anyway.
The recommendation is that we bring on Councillor.
Sorry, Councillor Frank Jonas is on there. Yes, to Hannah to replace Rob. Yes, to replace Robert New. Sorry, Councillor Hockaday. I'm assuming you haven't attended a meeting yet. I know that Councillor Frank Jonas did go to one a couple of weeks ago. Super. Okay, so are colleagues happy with the proposal? Thank you very much. Okay, item 5, the local plan consultation responses and way forward. And Toby or Claire, who's introducing the report?
I'll introduce the report. Tony will talk through the details.
Okay, over to you, Claire. Thank you very much.
Right. Good afternoon. The report you have in front of you is setting out the purpose, which is to report on the consultation that took place in August and September on the issues and options to consider for the local plan going forward. The report sets out the consultation responses, and Toby will go into them in more detail. It also updates members on government announcements on planning and seeks members' endorsement to the way forward in preparing the local plan for the coming period. Toby will now explain to you the issues and options and the consultation responses.
Okay, thank you. I was just going to run through briefly in the order of receipt of the paper. So, as we said, the consultation itself ran through August and September, and the paper goes on to dwell a little on the effectiveness of this at the start of the process here. So, under the heading effectiveness, and as well in Appendix 1 to this report, there's just time to reflect on how that consultation went. So we had a number of public exhibitions. We advertised the event through the Council's social media platforms and our own local plan database of contacts of people who are already interested in planning issues in the city. And the outcome of that is reflected in detail in Appendix 1, including things such as when we saw more people, when more people attended the consultation events themselves, the sort of attendance at various venues, that sort of thing. and to talk about as well the overall number of consultation responses we received. In short, at the moment, we think the consultation went reasonably well in terms of numbers. And looking back to how we did on the previous local plan, we've got more engagement, more response than we had at a similar stage last time round. So that's good. Nonetheless, the numbers are relatively low compared to, for instance, the population of the city as a whole. So we know we can do better. And there's some pointers in there about how the team will be reflecting on that going forward to improve those responses. But overall, we think we're not in a bad place to start with. The report then goes on under paragraph 12 and onwards to talk about the actual outcomes of the consultation. So we received 268 respondents made over 1,800 individual points for us to consider with the local plan, as well as a petition which was signed by almost 163 people, and a schedule summarising all those responses is Appendix 2 to your report. Because this is a public process as well, for full transparency, the actual representations themselves, with personal details removed, will be placed on our website shortly so that everyone can see what, for instance, Natural England had to say, or adjoining councils, that sort of thing. Paragraph 13 talks about some of the main issues that were raised. So we highlight things such as concerns over levels of housing development proposed that came out, comments regarding significant ecological assets, concerns over traffic congestion and capacity of our social infrastructure, schools and healthcare facilities. A lot of comments about the suitability of proposed uses at strategic sites such as Tipner, Port Solent, St James and Langston, and as well a common theme is a concern over the condition of the city centre and Commercial Road in particular. The report then goes on to summarise under all of the issues and options that were contained in the consultation, a summary of the responses made. I don't, unless people want me to go through and answer questions on any individual, I don't propose to go through one by one here and now. All I will say is that for each issue, when we're talking about a policy for the plan or a part of the city, the approach will be the same going forward, in that the team will sit there with the responses that have come from this consultation, along with the national legislation and planning guidance, and those two together will inform our technical work going forward to inform the next local plan. So moving on, towards paragraph 19 of the report, following those responses, following the consideration of those, the consultation itself, we highlight a list of technical work that is required to inform the new local plan. The breadth of work is not unusual for a local plan in that it has to consider a wide range of issues, and that is really the work that the team will be undertaking or commissioning in the months to come. And that will form the technical evidence base for the next local plan. Moving on, the report then talks about planning for growth, and as Claire said, there's some government announcements about housing need and understanding the main onus on councils at the moment through local plan to show what they are doing, demonstrate what they are doing in response to that level of housing need. And we talk about, it's all there. All I will say in summary for us is, in many ways, the general thrust of government policy is the same, in that it is down to us, the onus is on the council to show it is doing all it can reasonably to meet housing need in this area. Paragraph 30 of the report looks at a number of wider actions and work that is required for the council to inform the local plan and our overall approach to this. And it's talking about obviously looking at different parts of the city for the capacity. It's talking about areas that have been proposed by parties through the representations for new development, and then looking at our infrastructure requirements and how we're going to fund it, and reviewing the SIL charging schedule and other measures, as well as talking to our neighbours under duty to cooperate and other responsibilities we have. Finally, the report runs through the current position with neighbourhood planning in the city and the one neighbourhood designated area we have in Milton. And then the way forward is in effect asking members to endorse, first of all, to note the representations we have received, then to note exactly the approach to the work, in both the technical work and the more wide-ranging work required for the council over the coming months. There may be implications for the timetable, but we're asking for you to endorse the approach where we work with the leader as portfolio holder on both the timetable for the local plan and the revenue funding to deliver the remainder of the project. And that's the report. Thank you.
Thank you much, Toby, Claire, and to the rest of the planning policy team. This is a huge, huge piece of work, which obviously the council only embarks upon once every few years. And there is, I mean, the timetable is comprehensive. As you say, as the Cabinet Member with responsibility for planning regeneration, I've been through this with you extensively. I would like to say thank you to everybody who did respond. We had some really good, articulate, really well thought out responses from the initial consultation we've done over the way we will consult and the time frames and some of the key strategic points that will be included in that. And I really do think that the City Council now, I mean, I can only comment on the 9 years that I've been involved in the council, but I do think we are really building a really good, strong community base of both members of the public and developers and others who really are helping to assist us from a technical perspective. I think it's very, very useful indeed. So to everyone who has taken part in it so far, be it whether it's a paid professional officer of the council or members of the public, thank you very much. Colleagues, comments or questions for officers on the report before you today? No? Okay, right, so we've got 3 recommendations on the local plan consultation response and way forward. First one is to note the summary of the representations received during the issues and options consultation and the issues raised. Second one is to endorse the approach to carry out and complete further technical work to inform the production of the new local plan. And thirdly, to delegate approval for any necessary funding necessary to complete the local plan to the Director of Finance and Section 151 officer in consultation with the Leader of the Council. Are colleagues content with those 3 proposals? Okay, thank you very much. That's item 5 agreed. Thank you very much for coming. Item 6, budget monitoring quarter 2. We've got Chris Ward here to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. This report sets out the Council's budget position as at the midpoint of the year, so at the end of quarter 2, which is the end of September. In overall terms, the forecast for the Council's budget is a £1 million underspend. There's a summary of key variances set out in paragraph 4.2 of the report. Within those variances, there are a couple of notable overspending areas, but more than offset by what at this stage I describe as underspending areas. In terms of overspends, we have children's social care at 2.4 million and adult social care at 0.9 million. But as I mentioned earlier, these are more than offset by other areas of the budget. Firstly, the release from contingency of around £2 million, which was deliberately provided for within the budget to potentially accommodate risks associated with both adults and children's social care. On top of that, there's a underspend in relation to our treasury management activities of around about £2.5 million, and there's additional income from the commercial property portfolio of £500,000. Taking all of those things together, in overall terms, the council is around about has a forecast of a £1 million underspend for the end of the financial year. The plans to address the element of children's and adult social care overspending that are likely to continue are actually set out in the next agenda item, item 7 of this agenda. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Chris, even. Colleagues, any comments or questions for Chris? Ryan.
It wasn't necessarily a question, but just more of a comment. If I can just draw colleagues' attention to 5.1, where it's the children's social care overspend. I just wanted to provide some reassurance that there is a demand across nationally of increase into children's social care. This means we're not unique. We're not a unique local authority. And I think the key thing is that this authority understands where that pressure is, that it is predominantly, as this says, primarily related to higher costs and number of child placements. I think it's also important to note that this Conservative administration, as the Cabinet, has ensured that we've increased the social work capacity, and we approved that. So we do understand where the issues are. We're putting children and young people at the heart of this administration's priorities. and we will continue to make a plan to reduce that overspend.
Thank you very much. It's a very valuable contribution. And actually on that theme, you know, we are working together, obviously, yourself, myself, Chris, Alison, on that children's situation, and also obviously working with other neighbouring authorities where we can share services such as the Regional Adoption Agency as well. And also, whilst we've discussed this for other colleagues, it might be worth just pointing out that we've had some real successes in terms of national lobbying through the LGA with the adult social care precepting that was introduced in the last financial year. And the LGA are now shifting their focus from adults onto children's, because this, as Ryan has quite rightly said, is a pattern that is across the whole of the UK with upper tier councils that have responsibility for children's social care. I'd also like to take the opportunity to place on record my thanks to the adult social care team and Councillor Luke Stubbs, who you'll remember, colleagues, that we set aside £500,000 into a transformation fund within our was it capital revenue last year? The £500,000. Yeah. It was in revenue to support transformation, and actually Councillor Stubbs has been utilising that very well with a number of systems thinking interventions going on across adults to address the overspend there, and there have been some real success stories which has actually resulted in better service for people that we represent, hasn't it, Councillor Stubbs? Anything you wish to add on any of that? You have to push a button. No? Okay. Right. Any colleagues got anything else they'd like to say about the Q2 budget monitoring report? No? No? Okay. Right. In which case, we have 3 recommendations before us for this report. First one, that the Cabinet note the forecast outturn position for 2017-18 of, first of all, an underspend of £2,459,200 before further forecast transfers to or from the portfolio specific reserve ring-fenced for public health, and secondly, an underspend of £1,035,500 after further forecast transfer from or to the portfolio specific reserve and ring-fenced again to public health and to the public health reserve. Members note that any actual overspend at year end will in the first instance be deducted from any portfolio specific reserve, as you would expect, and so to neutralise a balance, and once that's depleted it will then be deducted from the 2018-19 cash limit. And finally, that directors in consultation with the appropriate Cabinet member consider options that seek to minimise any forecast overspend presently being reported and prepare strategies outlining how any consequent reduction in the 2018-19 portfolio cash limit will be managed to avoid further overspending during 2018-19. Are you satisfied with that, colleagues? Thank you very much. Okay. So now moving on to item 7, which is the Portsmouth City Council Revenue Budget 2018-19, including the savings proposals, and hand back over to Chris Ward for that item.
Thank you, Chair. This report sets out the administration's savings proposals to feature in the 2018-19 budget, so next year's budget. This will obviously be debated by full council. It's a full council decision. This will be debated by full council tomorrow. It is actually a precursor to the formal council budget and council tax setting meeting, which will take place on the 13th of February 2018. The proposals within the report amount to, or the savings proposals within the report amount to £4 million. And they are the first tranche of the forecast £12 million savings that are required over the next 3 years. It sets out within the report that of the £4 million worth of savings proposals put forward by the administration, 60% of those are efficiency savings, 36% of those savings arise from additional income, and just 4% arise from service reductions. The savings proposals put forward do align with the Council's medium-term financial strategy, and they're also consistent with the budget consultation response that closed back in November. At the same time, when we take the report to Council in February, at that point we'll also do a comprehensive revision of the Council's future forecast. So the £12 million forecast deficit at the moment may well be revised at the February budget meeting date. And also of note within the report are three other things. Firstly, that it's recommended that we prepare the budget report for February on the basis of a 1.99% increase in council tax for general purposes. That we also prepare it on the basis of a total of a 3% increase for the adult social care precept, but that 3% increase phased across 2 years. And finally, there's a proposal within the report to replenish the voluntary sector capacity and transition fund up to its £500,000 level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And on that final point that Chris has just mentioned, that's because of that £500,000 that I mentioned in the last item that we set aside, I think all bar 80,000 of that has been allocated or ring-fenced or spent on specific projects. So well done to Councillor Stubbs and team for using that money as it was intended. I'd like to just say thank you so much to Chris and the finance team and directors across the council for helping us to work up the administration's budget again for 2018-19. This is the third budget that we are presenting to members of the City Council and also to the public as the Conservative administration running the council. You'll remember in 2014, in June, when we became the administration, we inherited a budget that had been set in the February of that year. This really is, from my perspective, I think the best budget that we've put forward so far, because now the income generation ideas and strategies that we have implemented over the last couple of years are growing in their momentum, and as a consequence the amount of money that we are having to cut from public services is diminished considerably. And when you look around at neighbouring councils and you look at those who are now on fortnightly bin collections, those that have had to close libraries and museums and other non-statutory services, it's all across the UK. Actually, this council is extending its opening hours of its libraries, it's building new museums, we're opening gift shops in our libraries thanks to Councillor Symes and her team, and we really are using every angle we possibly can to create income, and I'm sure there's still a lot more that we can do to really make sure we are protecting first-class public services for members of the public, which is what we're here to do. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to colleagues, cabinet members as well, because I know you've all worked very, very hard with your directors. So colleagues, any questions or comments on the revenue budget 2018-19 and the proposed savings? Councillor Ryan-Brent.
Sorry, just to lead on from a couple of points so they link in together. Again, I can draw colleagues' attention, I can just explain them, but on page 185 and 1.12, it says that Children's Social Care has got a plan to ensure that we're reducing the deficit. That's the commentary throughout this whole report sort of leads on to that on 206, 10.9. There's a plan to reduce that deficit. It gives explicit examples of where we can be doing that and where we are looking as the cabinet member and with the director and all of the teams and the deputy director underneath of ways of reducing that deficit. So there is a consistent theme of a plan. I think, again, this Conservative administration has shown with the savings proposals on Appendix A that there is a 0% children's social care reduction or savings proposal. And I think that really is important to show that we understand and we place a high importance on the services that are delivered to those young people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else, colleagues? No? Okay. Well, I'm not proposing to read out the recommendations in this report because it will take me 20 minutes to read them out because there are quite a lot, as you would expect. But they start on page 1.8. Give me 30 seconds. The recommendations start 189? Thank you. After the executive summary. Yes, thank you, David. Under item 3 of the report, recommendations, and then obviously that covers the main basis of the report, including the risks and financial outturn, business rates, and the predictions going forward, as Chris has concisely explained at the beginning when he introduced the report. So, colleagues, are you happy with the Portsmouth City Council revenue budget 2018-19 savings proposals? Agreed? Thank you very much. Right, so that's item 7 done. So now moving on to item 8 and 9, item 9 being the city centre road and the proposal that we have before us today. I'm just going to look to Claire for a moment because item 8, as you'll know, is to move into exclusion of the press and public. just to ask you, do you think that you could introduce the report without going into exclusion, or do you think you do need to be in exclusion to fully introduce it? And if you do, no problem, we can do that. I'm just wondering at what point we might want to move into exclusion, if at all.
Right, I think the report could be introduced, but I think it's likely that it would quickly go into matters that would be exclusion. It would also be useful to have Tom Southall here as well to present the report, so we might want to pause to give him time to come over to the meeting.
Was he due to be coming to present with you jointly?
Yes.
Okay, could you chase that up for us then, please, and get Tom here ASAP if that's okay. Michael, any comments from you?
Yes, Leader. Perhaps if Claire can begin to introduce the report, and then we'll move into exempt session, at which stage we have to switch off the microphones and the filming of the meeting as well.
So, Claire, do you think, would you like to introduce in closed session or in open session? What would you prefer to do?
I would prefer to do in closed session because I think it's inevitable that we'll stray on to exempt
Leader, then if
information.
we'd like to pass the resolution, and then we'll
Yeah.
move into exempt session.
Okay, thank you very much. So for any people watching this at home, where there are items that are commercially sensitive, we are advised by our solicitors and professional officers that it would be at the detriment to third-party companies, organisations, or to the City Council to speak openly about the item in public because they are very commercially sensitive. So this is in relation to the City Centre Road and the work that we are doing around that. The main City Centre Road update, there is some information in the public domain on the Council's website for those people that want to get a gist of what this is about and where we're going with this. But item 8 of this agenda is a proposition to the Cabinet to move into exclusion of the press and public, and that under the provisions of section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Act 1985, the press and public be excluded for the consideration of the following item on the grounds that the reports contain information defined as exempt in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Now, it really is something that we don't do lightly. We like to do everything as open and transparent as we possibly can. Hence why we're having these meetings, live stream now. But occasionally these things do happen. Colleagues, are you content to move into... Michael, anything you want to add before we take a vote?
All that I was going to say is that if you do decide to move into exempt session, then we will switch off the microphones in the recording of the meeting. Then we will switch those back on again at the end so that you can actually announce what your decision is.
Colleagues, any comments or questions before we go to the vote? Okay, so all those in favour of moving into exempt session as proposed on item 8? Okay, that's unanimous. So members of the public, we will be back shortly.